Hello, everybody. So today I want to talk about how to leave an eating disorder behind. So I'm sharing this from personal experience. I struggled with anorexia for a number of years, and what I wish that somebody would have told me during that time is that you can leave at any given moment. You are not obligated to stay with your eating disorder for any length of time. And what I think a really important comparison to make is that an eating disorder is an abusive relationship. It's not like an abusive relationship. An eating disorder actually is an abusive relationship, and we have to think about it that way. Because an eating disorder actually manipulates your brain to believe that you need it in order to be happy, in order to be fulfilled, in order to be at peace, in order to feel okay about yourself. So just like in an abusive relationship, an eating disorder convinces you that if you leave it behind, you will not be okay, you will not be loved, you will not be able to go on with your life, that you need it for your safety, that you need it for your happiness, that you need it in order to have what you want in your life. So this is exactly what an abuser does in a domestic violence situation, in any sort of abusive relationship. The abuser convinces the other person that they need them, and that if they were to try to leave them, that everything would fall to pieces. So this is the same thing that an eating disorder does, which is why it is so hard for us to leave it behind, because we've been convinced that we are obliged to keep it around. So what was really helpful for me to do with my eating disorder was to actually give it a name and relate to it as something outside of myself, because it is. Those sensations and that thought process that locks you into an eating disorder is not you. It has nothing to do with you. You're not dependent on it. It's not keeping you safe. It actually has nothing to do with you whatsoever. So as soon as we can give it a name, we've now objectified it, and we see it as something outside of ourselves. The same thing in an abusive relationship. What keeps us in an abusive relationship is that we identify with the other person, and we think that we have to stay with them in order for our identity to be preserved. And the types of excuses that we say to ourselves is, well, but I've stayed with this person for so many years. How am I supposed to leave them now? They've given me so much. How am I supposed to leave them now? And we create this sense of obligation and dependency because we have all of these excuses. But I've been with them for so long, but they've done so much for me, which is exactly the same justification that we often do when we have an eating disorder. We say, but I've been acting this way for so many years, but I've been dependent on my eating disorder for years and years now. So we feel this sense that we almost owe it something, right? Which is the same thing that keeps people locked in an abusive relationship. So what it's important to note when you're struggling with an eating disorder is that you can walk away at any moment, right now, right now, right now, right now, right now, right now. You are free to leave that relationship. You are not obligated to stay with your eating disorder because it is not serving you. It is not giving you anything that is supportive of you. It is not keeping you safe. It is not protecting you. It is not making you happy. It is not giving you what you truly want. In fact, it is preventing you from having that. Just like in an abusive relationship, we're in the illusion that if we leave the abusive relationship, then life isn't going to be as good, or we're not going to be safe. But in reality, if you leave that relationship, the sky is the limit. You can truly search for true connection, true peace, true love that doesn't entail abuse. So if you're in an abusive relationship, my advice to you is if you have an eating disorder, my advice to you is to give your eating disorder a name. Relate to it as an entity outside of yourself, as something that is not you, and then start to have a dialogue with that entity and start standing up to it and start talking to it and telling it that you do not need it. You do not need your eating disorder, that you know that your eating disorder has been manipulating you and has been telling you that you're dependent on it, but that you know better. And you know that you are better off without it. And I know that it's kind of hard to think about an eating disorder as an outside entity, but really that's what it is. We've been If you have an eating disorder, you've been putting your thoughts and your energy into something for so long that it now has a life of its own. Your eating disorder is an entity that has a life of its own, and that's why it seems like you're the victim of it. That's why it seems like it's controlling you, because you've given it so much power over time. But that power that you've given it is nothing in comparison to your choice to leave it behind. And I know it seems scary, because it is. It's scary as hell to walk away from an abusive relationship. But that doesn't mean that you can't do it. You are brave enough to do it. You are brave enough to leave it behind. It's just as if you were on an airplane and you've been standing on the edge wanting to jump for so long, but you've been clinging on to the side, and you're so scared because you're not sure what's going to happen when you jump, and it seems so frightening. But you need to know that you will be safe, that your parachute will work when you finally choose to jump out of that plane and to leave your eating disorder behind. You will be safe. You will be okay. And even though you've been resisting the jump for so long, that doesn't mean that you don't have the power to do it. Okay. So all of that power and all of that significance that you've been giving to your eating disorder is meaningless. It's okay that you've been giving it that power, but you don't have to anymore. You're not obligated to it. It doesn't require any more of your attention. And as soon as you can start relating to your eating disorder as an outside entity that is not you and that has nothing to do with you, then the sooner that you will experience that who you really are has always been free, has always simply been the witness to your thoughts and your sensations that you have interpreted as your eating disorder. So one thing that you can do when you have a reaction, when your eating disorder flares up and it starts to manifest in your body and in your mind, if you're about to go eat a meal, or if you just ate a meal, or whenever your trigger points are for you, what you can do is you can sit down and you can close your eyes and you can start to do a body scan from your head all the way down to your toes, and then back from your toes all the way back up to your head. And simply witness the sensations that are arising for you. Where do you feel it? Is there tightness in your chest? Do you feel it in your head? Do you feel it in your stomach? Do you feel it in your thighs? Do you feel it in your toes? Where is your body having a reaction? And what thoughts is your mind producing? The thoughts that you have are just like radio static. Your brain is an antenna. That radio static is meaningless. Your thoughts are not you. Your sensations are not you. So if you can begin to reside as the witness and really just watch the storm that erupts that is your eating disorder, and you can start to be objective about it and simply witness it without reacting to it, then you are slowly reclaiming your power from it. And you're seeing that it is just an object of your awareness. Those sensations, those thoughts are simply objects that are arising in the vast, empty, spacious awareness that you are. Who you really are has never, ever, ever truly been affected by those thoughts and sensations. You have always been free. You have always only been the witness. They have never truly had power over you. Those thoughts have never been meaningful, and they have never been in control. You have always been the one in control, because you are always simply the awareness in which those thoughts and those sensations arise. And when you realize that, you will realize that you have always been free to leave it behind. You have always been free to let it go. You have always, always, always been free to walk away. And today is the best possible day for you to choose to no longer be a prisoner to your eating disorder. Today is the best possible day for you to choose to say no to your abuser, to call your abuser out for the way that it has been manipulating you for so many years, and to tell it that you do not owe it anything, that you are not obligated to listen to what it says, and that you are choosing to walk away. And you have to understand that your eating disorder, your abuser, is going to do what abusers do, and it is going to try to convince you to stay, and it is going to shout its bad advice at you even louder than ever when you try to leave, and it's going to tell you that your life is going to be horrible when you try to walk away, and that you need it, and that you're not going to be okay without it. And you have to recognize that this is simply the behavior of an abuser, this is what abusers do, and that it doesn't mean anything, and that you actually are going to be okay when you walk away, and that what is on the other side of your decision to leave your abuser is absolute freedom and peace for you, okay? And the other thing to recognize is that as soon as you leave an abusive relationship, you need to go to something that's going to nourish you in the way that you thought that your abusive relationship was nourishing you. So recognize that your eating disorder has been giving you something. It's been giving you something to control. It's been giving you a sense of self-efficacy. It's been giving you a sense of independence. It's been giving you a sense of power and of control, okay? Now, you don't need your eating disorder. You don't need your abusive relationship to give you those things. There's many, many other things that can give you what your eating disorder has been giving you, okay? Any creative act, learning to play the guitar, or getting really into meditation, or writing a novel, or writing a short story, any of those things, learning to cook, learning to dance salsa, can give you that sense of self-efficacy, can give you that sense of power, can give you that sense of independence. You can obsess about any one of those things, and that's much healthier than obsessing about your body and obsessing about your weight. So when you're in the process of leaving your eating disorder, you need another life raft that you can grab onto that's going to give you something to channel all of that energy into, to put your attention and your focus onto, because the thing that you've been putting your attention and focus onto is now being, well, you're leaving it behind. So now you need to find something else that can give you whatever it is that your eating disorder was giving you, but something that's actually going to nourish you, something that's actually going to be healthy for you, something that's actually going to fuel you, okay? So when you're thinking about your eating disorder, again, I want you to think about it in terms of it is an abusive relationship. You have been manipulated by your eating disorder to believe that you need it and to believe that you're not going to be okay without it. And so when you're talking to your eating disorder, as if it is something outside of you, I want you to be coaching yourself. Give yourself the advice that you would give to a dear friend if that dear friend was in an abusive relationship. What would you say to her? You would say, you don't need this person, that you are better than this, that you deserve more than this, and that you're going to be okay when you leave them, and that you have the power to leave them whenever you want to. You would tell your friend, you can leave that person today. You should leave them right now. You should call them and tell them that you're not putting up with this anymore, that you do not need them, and that you are going off on your own. That is the advice that you would give to a dear friend if they were in an abusive relationship. And you would be compassionate with them, and you would say, listen, I know, I understand that it is so hard for you to leave this relationship. I know that you've been in it for a long time, and I know that you think that you need it, and I know that you think that you won't be okay without it. I totally understand that, and I want you to know that you're gonna be fine. Your parachute will open on the way down. I promise you that. You can't know exactly what's going to happen until you actually leave it, until you leave that relationship, but I promise you that you're going to be okay. So this is how I want you to coach yourself through the act of completely leaving your eating disorder behind. I want you to coach yourself as if you are a dear friend that is in an abusive relationship, that is terrified of what's going to happen when you leave that abusive relationship because you think that you need it. And I want you to have that level of self-compassion when you're going through this process, but also that level of holding yourself to it, that level of insistence, that level of insisting that you leave that relationship and insisting that it is not good for you and insisting that you are going to be okay on the other side of it. Okay, so your advice to sum it all up is, if you have an eating disorder, you have to recognize that that is an abusive relationship that has been manipulating you to believe that you need that relationship in order to be okay. And what I want you to do is I want you to name your eating disorder and start relating to it, to the thoughts and sensations that comprise your eating disorder, as an outside entity that has been abusing you. And I want you to start to have a dialogue with that entity and start challenging it. Start challenging its voice, start challenging its bad advice, start challenging everything that it says to you, and start standing up to it, and start asserting that you are going to leave it behind and that you do not need it anymore. And then I also want you, in the meantime, to be thinking through what sort of support you need when you leave this abusive relationship so that you can be nourished in the way that you thought that your eating disorder was nourishing you. And I want you to start taking up acts of creativity. You know, an eating disorder is often filling a creative void. It's often filling a void that we think that we can't get elsewhere. But the truth is that you can get it elsewhere. You can channel all of that energy into something that's actually nourishing, actually creative, actually good for you. So start thinking about, what is my eating disorder giving me, or what do I think it's giving me, and what's a list of 10 other ways that I could get that are a lot healthier. And I want you to start picking up those things so that you can transition and you can leave the abusive relationship of your eating disorder and you can fall into the arms of something that's much more safe and much more stable. Okay, so I hope this was helpful for any of you watching. If you want more coaching on dealing with an eating disorder or on any sort of dependency, you know, this is true for any sort of dependency on outside validation. If you're obsessive about getting people to like you, if you're obsessive about getting your followers on Instagram up, if you're obsessive about making money, anything outside of you that you're obsessing about, this is the same sort of dialogue that we would have. So if you're struggling to try to leave a destructive habit behind and you need some help and guidance in that process of leaving that abusive relationship, leaving that dependency, leaving that alcohol abuse, leaving whatever it is, feel free to reach out to me and message me, and we can talk about you getting some coaching and getting some support around that. All right, so thank you everybody for watching. Let me know what else you'd like coaching on, and I'll see you next time.